Nothing like getting the morning started with a pirate broadcast. It's Russ, and I'm here with Harry Duran from none other than FullCast.co, and we're talking about podcasting today. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. So, Harry, good morning. How are you? Are you freezing?
Yeah, a little bit, Russ. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for being here, and thank you for joining the pirate broadcast. We met earlier. We were actually doing another program, and it's nice to finally actually connect on the pirate broadcast and get going. And I've enjoyed podcasts for years, and I kind of wanted to hear your backstory and how you actually got into podcasting, how you got started, and how you've been developing this FullCast.co and helping other podcasters get launched, because I know you've done a lot of work in the background and strategy and everything that goes along with that. So if you could share a little bit with us, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, the backstory is I was in corporate America for about 15 to 20 years. I lost count at this point. But the related story is that I've always had a love of music, electronic music, specifically like house music. I grew up DJing with I've had my first set of turntables, the Technics 1200s.
All right.
And I learned vinyl, so like how to beat match and all that stuff. So that was a lot of fun.
That's very cool. I used to do dub music over in Houston with Ableton Live and APC 40. So it's
very good. So then what happened is I would go to music festivals, and we would go to music festivals and see the DJs, and I thought it would be interesting to create an app, sort of like a Pandora for electronic music, and for people to understand, or for me specifically to see, which DJs are playing. And so it would just be an app for DJs. So with a friend of mine, we put it together. It was called Know Your DJ. It's no longer available. And it was just a cool way to kind of like have all the information about the DJs in one place. So fast forward around late 2013, I figured I want to promote it. So I wanted to start a podcast. And I was a fan of a show called Resident Advisor. And so long form interviews with DJs, which fascinated me. So I went to New Media Expo in Las Vegas in January 2014. And then when I went there, I saw Pat Flynn was speaking, Amy Porterfield was speaking, Cliff Ravenscraft was speaking. So it was just interesting. And another side note, it's funny how all your interests dovetail. I studied acting a little bit when I lived in New York City, and I was always a fan of that show, Inside the Actor Studio.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
So I thought of that, and I said, what about something like that, but for podcasters? So I came up. I was listening to Cliff speak, and he mentioned, or someone mentioned, Chris, who introduced him, mentioned this idea of podcast junkies, and I was like, no, that's me. And came back home, registered a domain, and started inviting a couple of people that I met, and the idea was born. It's a bit meta. It's a podcast where I interview other podcasters.
That's brilliant. I love that. Well, that's kind of like what I'm doing here. Is I'm interviewing interesting people doing interesting things, because it's like, exactly. If I find it interesting, it might be interesting to someone else. You never know,
exactly,
right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so,
go ahead.
And so once I came back, I started doing that. I was still working my full-time job, and I was just having these face-to-face conversations. I was doing Skype with call recorder. Now we use a tool called SquadCast .fm to record, because I was always a fan, and I'm sure you can relate to this, of having a face-to-face connection with your guest is really important.
Yeah.
And so when I then basically about a year in, I hired a business coach because the entrepreneurial bug was like really like kicking in, and
Kicking in.
that's another story if we have time for that. But um, I started basically looking and seeing what I could do and start my own business. So I got a business coach. It was a high end like business mastermind, and it was like my mind was kind of blown because I started meeting all these people that are running like 6 and 7 figure businesses all online. I did not know this stuff even existed, Russ. It was like
Yeah.
Narnia. It was like business Narnia. I was like, I was like, well, who are these? How is this possible? And then, something that I started seeing, like, inspirational speakers, and I saw
Uh-huh.
something by, um, I always, what's this guy's name? I forgot his name now. The guy who inspired Tony Robbins, but he says, you are the average of the 5 people you spend. Jim Rohn,
Jim
you are
Rohn.
the,
Yeah.
yeah, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And this goes for everything, like in business and stuff like that. So I really needed to up my game. So about a year into the podcast, I started FullCast, and I realized there was a need for a premium done for you service for specifically the type of people that I was meeting in this mastermind, like
Yeah.
people who understand opportunity cost, they understand what an hour of their time is worth, they value their time, and when they need help and they want to grow their business, the first thing they do is they look for the who. Not They
Yeah.
don't go do it themselves. They figure out who can do this for me, and
Yeah.
so that's so Fullcast was born, and been doing that for 5 years now. The podcast 6 years, and we've been serving brands and businesses, helping them with everything from the startup of their show to the production and the ongoing marketing of their show as well.
Well, I really love the direction too, in where podcasting is developed, and you know, Spotify purchased Gimlet, and they just bought another platform, and so I'm sure they'll be knocking on your door anytime soon. Now,
They bought the Ringer.
yeah, they bought Ringer, yeah,
Yeah,
and the new ESPN style thing, and Bleacher Report I know is out there too, and uh, it's all of these things are coming into focus because years ago I actually taught a workshop at Podcast Movement. I think it was probably about 2014 as well, and I've taught podcasting here and there, and one of the things that I've noticed over the years is that it's getting easier to actually start a podcast, and it's not getting any easier to grow and develop a podcast. And I think that's really the highlight that I want to shine for you is this idea that because I preach this all the time. It's like, just pick up your phone and start a podcast. Fire up an Anchor account, and you got a podcast, right? And the reality is, though, is a lot of people have a misconception about what it takes to podcast and what it takes to grow a podcast. And consistency is key. So I kind of want to go through, and I downloaded your PDF, and I kind of want to, and for anyone here, Harry's an amazing resource. And if you're not connected with him, get connected with on LinkedIn, and go visit Harry over at the FullCast website, and get to know Harry, because he's an amazing individual that you should know. And I want to make sure, Harry, that people understand a little slice of how challenging it can be to grow a podcast. Because, I mean, and here I want to give you a round of applause. You're number 100 on the Pirate Broadcast episodes. This
that's
is
nice.
100, episode 100.
That's cool.
I haven't been naming, numbering the episodes and the channels, but I mean, we're streaming right now to Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Periscope right now. And then by the end of the day, I'll have a podcast and a transcript and a post up on my website. So exposure is part of the equation,
Yeah.
and strategy is another part. And I want to dive into a little bit what you've discovered along your journey in terms of the strategy of podcasting. So
Yeah,
maybe you
it's re-
dive
yeah,
in.
it's really that's a good point. And thanks for highlighting that because it's one of those things it's easy to learn. It's like they say with a lot of things, but a lifetime to master.
Yeah.
And and there's the basics that you need. You definitely want to start with quality. The microphone that I'm using now is a Samson Q2U. It's $60 on Amazon. It's a dynamic mic. You can see that it has USB and the XLR in the back
Uh-huh.
here, so it can
Reminds
grow
me of
with
an
you.
ATR 2100.
Exactly. It actually, you know, what's interesting, Russ, is it's sort of like the next step up from the ATR 2100. When I
Uh-huh.
got started, that was my first podcasting mic as well.
Uh-huh.
And what's interesting is that what I'm noticing is a lot of people in the business of podcasting lose an opportunity to engage with people who like their product. And so I just want to talk about the mic specifically. When we started going to the conferences, Audio Technica was nowhere to be found. Like everyone was using and talking about their mic. It was really a missed opportunity, which is
Yeah.
interesting. In turn, Samson, if you go to the conferences, I've met the people at Samson. I've spoken at a Samson event at B&H Photo in New York City.
Uh-huh.
I'm working on with them on content for their site. I know Ira and Sean who work at Samson. So in the podcasting community, and I'm sure you've experienced some of this, you have an affinity for a product when you can develop relationships with the people who who run it or the people who represent it. So that's one of the reasons why I'm just a huge proponent and give free advertising whenever I can to these products and these brands and these folks that I work with.
Yeah.
So start with a mic. You always want to try to have just headphones as well, and not be like speaking into a laptop because you'll get the feedback. I have earbuds on right now, but you can use like these Sony MDX headphones. They're 15 bucks. They're not
They're not
expensive at all.
expensive.
No, and what you want, it's just these little things that make you sound more professional. And then the first thing you want to do is really think about. And I know I jumped into the gear, but
Hmm.
when we talk with clients, the first thing we think about is what you want your show to be, like planning and positioning your show. Too many people think they can have a fun name or a cool name on Apple Podcasts, but the reality, if depending on what your show is, if you're trying to build a show about a brand, a name that like Pirate Broadcast is awesome because while it will take some time for people to figure out what it is, once you have that brand, people are going to associate it with you. So that's going to be a little long tail effect.
Yeah.
But if you're starting a show and you want people to listen to it, it's best to leverage the SEO power of podcasts. And too many people like lose sight of this. One of my earliest clients was an angel investor,
Mhm.
and she was struggling with the name of the show. I said, "Can you do me a favor and see if angelinvestingpodcast.com is available?"
Yeah.
and
No
that
kidding.
that's what we called it. We called it the Angel Investing Show.
Yeah.
Another client is a photographer who teaches photographers how to grow their photography business. No surprise, but we called it Photo Biz Help
Well,
because
sometimes as marketers, we tend to get,
cute.
I tend to get, I'm not going to lay this out on everyone, but it's like, okay, I want a little fancy thing, you know. It's like just keep it simple. Just keep
Yeah,
it simple, right?
and
And
with
that's
the
a good
latest,
point. That's a good point. For SEO and everything else, a simple name is a good way to start.
yeah, and with 800,000 plus podcasts in the Apple Podcast directory, like you really got to do what you can to stand out. And then just from a graphics perspective, like sans serif fonts, high contrasting colors, you're trying to catch people's attention from the beginning. As
Yeah.
you're organizing your show, think about what you want to do. Do you have content already that you can repurpose, or do you teach something? Do you have a course? Just take those modules and
Mhm.
make those the episodes, and just always. Anyone who's teaching content or who wants to be seen as a thought leader already has things that they do for other people, and people get worried. Well, I'm going to give my best stuff away on a podcast, and then people won't have anything to come back for. The framework to understand is you give them the what and the why for free, but what they're paying for is the how. Because
Yeah.
a lot of times where people need help is with the implementation. So think about that as you're going to frame the content for your episodes. Plan your episodes out. Use a tool like Airtable. We prepare templates for clients where we help them plan out the first 12 episodes.
Yep.
So you know what you're going to talk about, you know what the topic is. You're using an SEO friendly title
Mhm.
because again, people lose an opportunity. Like talk about if it's a well-known name, put that at the front of the title. But if it's a topic that people are interested in, lead with that. I think best practices is about 7 to 9 words for an SEO title because Apple will cut that off in
Yeah.
Apple Podcasts. So just little things specific to podcasts
Simple
that,
things.
yeah, that people should be thinking about, and then record high quality. Something where people are going to hear it and realize that it's not amateur hour, and
Yeah.
that's where the gear comes in. If you're doing remote interviews, obviously you can use a tool like StreamYard. We use a tool called SquadCast.fm. It captures both sides of the conversation as a WAV file, so through a browser as a WAV file. So if there's a choppy
Ringer
internet,
used to do that. I don't know if they're
yeah,
still around.
yeah, so it doesn't affect the quality of the recording, and then it's backing up to the cloud every 8 seconds. So if you
Is it
lose the connection,
squadcast.fm?
.fm. And
Okay.
I've been working with the team since I met them at Podcast Movement in 2017. And then about a year later, they brought me on as a founding advisor. So help
Oh,
them give them guidance on the UX and the UI of the tool, really hone into the design so it's favorable for podcasters. And the important thing is I started introducing them to the podcast community so people know Zach, Rock, the founders of SquadCast.
yeah.
so
Yeah.
so record high quality, and then once that's done, you want to edit and keep it short, 30 to 45 minutes. You're not going to be Joe Rogan out of the gate with a 3 hour interview.
He's
but
just
but
hanging out with his friends,
yeah,
talking
yeah,
is all.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing, and that leads to the conversation about how long should a podcast be, right?
Yeah.
As long as it needs to be to keep your audience entertained. And for Joe, because of his raving fans, that's 3 hours. There's
Yeah.
a past guest, Mignon Fogarty, episode 101 on Podcast Junkies. She's Grammar Girl. She's
Uh-huh.
got a whole network of shows that are about 5 minutes long.
Oh, that's
So
amazing. That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Hey, I want to give a shout out to the people in the room because I know a lot of them. Vicky O'Neill has a podcast. She does a lot of great work. I think Wendy Gahuli is going to be doing more podcasts, and Wendy uh, is amazing. There's a lot of people that thank you so much for being here. I just really appreciate you. Harry jumping in and helping us is Kieran Beatty. Thank you. Sherry Lawley, Gabriel just launched his. I had a conversation with Gabriel, and he's doing some live stream on YouTube now, and getting his first show started. It's like we all start at zero, right? We all start.
Yes.
We pick up whatever we pick up, and we get started. And in today's world, we all have an opportunity to share our gifts and our message. So just get out there. Michael Ray's in the room. Good morning, Vicky O'Neill. Thank you so much.
Kudos to all
Bernie,
of you for getting up so early.
yeah, Bernie's here, and thank you, Bernie, for being here. I think, in fact, Harry, I think I have 4 slots left in March until I'm completely booked. That's
Wow.
5 days a week. So 5 days a week, I'm booked for March. So there's a lot of interest, I think, in people in being present and helping and share some of the ideas that they're putting out there. So it's really amazing to see the excitement and the enthusiasm around this.
One,
Leslie,
one thing, one thing I want to touch on what you're doing, which is interesting, is something that's relatable to podcasting, is recognizing the people who support your show day in and day out. As podcasters, what we can do sometimes is read out the reviews that people send us. So I always tell clients, make time at the beginning or end of your show, like give a shout out to the people who are reviewing your show, or if you've connected with a listener, like everyone remembers, or maybe just old people, the older folks like me, when you would call into a radio station and request your favorite Duran song,
yeah,
and they would play it on the air, and you're like, oh my God, like Russ mentioned my name. That's
yeah.
so cool. That still works, and there's still ways to do that. So I really applaud what you're doing in supporting your audience as well.
Well, in LinkedIn, it's a little more challenging. But if you're joining in, like from like I can put this in here, Angie. from Wisconsin is in from Periscope. So, and Facebook, they have an opportunity to actually post on the in the show, and it's kind of cool. It's I think it's awesome, and thank you, Angie, for being here, and thank you for posting on Periscope so I can illustrate this thing. And the reality is it's I love the people that are coming in here, and I've met some incredibly amazing friends on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is an amazing community. I would love to see a little more opportunity to engage with the audience on LinkedIn because it's a little more challenging, and so it's crazy. But Gary's here, Leslie Osborne, thank you so much. All of these individuals that take the time to come in and watch it live, that's amazing. And then also it's after the fact, it's the replays and everything else. It's the interaction that comes along with that, and
Yeah,
that's the intimacy that podcasting brings to the table. It's you're in the ear.
totally.
You're like, hey, you could go for a walk with you, and everything that goes along with that. So, I love the idea that that you're bringing to the table. It's like, okay, communicate with the audience, bring this out, engage, make sure that you're building a relationship with your audience as well. So what's the
Totally.
biggest challenges you see podcasters getting to? It's like, I know there's a lot of buzz around getting in new and noteworthy. And, I've been in podcasting long enough to know that it's a long game. It's a marathon,
It is. Yeah.
and so showing up on a regular basis and being there for individuals and knowing that, okay, there's a lot of people say, well, I can't make the time of the show. It's like, well, it's a live show. Like it's like, thank you for getting up early, and being here. And there's some others that, haven't had the opportunity to get up and be on the show. So
Yeah.
it's like, all right, that's okay. Not for everyone.
I think what's important is to have a clear understanding of why you want to do the show,
Hmm.
because it's going to help you through the lulls, help you, you know, figure out if you want to keep doing this. And quite honestly, there's different flavors of that. You could decide you just want to have like a a brochure in the podcast world. So you do like a limited series. You do an 8-part, 12-part series. You
Yeah.
make sure that your content is evergreen, that it's not dated, that you're not referring to like dates. So when people find you a year from now or 3 years from now, they can still come back to your content. And that's still pretty powerful
Hmm.
because Apple keeps those podcasts as long as you're paying your hosting. Like that podcast is going to live on in eternity in Apple Podcasts. That's why there's a lot of podcasts that are still ranking high that haven't published an episode in like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So there is an option, but if you do want to continue, like think about why you're doing it. Be consistent, record ahead of time, batch. I'm a huge fan of batching. Record 4 episodes in one day. You can, John Lee Dumas is famous for his approach when he got started, Entrepreneur on Fire, a daily
Right.
podcast. We chatted at Podcast Movement years ago, and he said he records. He was batching 7 or 8 episodes on one day. I
Uh-huh.
spoke to him a year or two later. He was because he's John Lee Dumas. He
Yeah.
was batching 2 days, 15 episodes in one day, 15 episodes the next day, and he had his whole month of content done. And
Completed.
again, that's not for everyone, believe me.
Yeah.
Results may vary, but it's just the idea of preparing and being prepared for your audience because it'll show.
Yeah. And a live streaming show is a little different. I I was thinking about the YouTube effect, and doing more on YouTube, and I like the fact that I can just get up. It's a great way to start my day. I was a musician for years. I played
Okay.
professionally, and I for 4 years I played almost every single night,
Hmm.
back to back, every single night,
Wow.
and it was part of my routine. It was just like, okay. And the way I look at this right now with Pirate Broadcast is, if I can get up in the morning, knock out a show, it starts my day, gets me going. It gives me a new perspective. Every guest gives me a new energy to say,
Yeah.
hey, I could go do something great, and then also I can help other people along the way. And as this, and I'm really an advocate for kindness and smiles, and just having enjoy the moment.
Hmm.
Find the joy in the day, and
Yeah.
that's my motivation. It's like interesting people having interesting conversations that are fly on the wall, and a whole bunch of people can join in and listen in and then get their day started as well.
Yeah,
And I
it's
think,
it's very inspiring, and I think the reason that there's people connected live is because you've built up a brand, you've built up a relationship. In podcasting, they talk about the know, like, and trust factor. So they know you, they like you, they trust you, they know what they're going to get day in and day out with you. So that's really powerful in terms of building a community.
yeah. So longer term, you have 100 episodes. You have a little bit of an audience. How do you start getting the numbers? I mean, what are your techniques that you make recommendations for, that, or you notice that it are, because the algorithms are always changing,
Yeah.
Google and Apple's changed, and things have evolved over the years. And I've never been one to chase numbers. I do notice the numbers, and it's a reflection of something else is, and so downloads are evolving. There's lots of different, Spotify's really getting into the podcasting arena. So what are some trends that you notice that are working for podcasters once they have an audience and they start growing this audience? I mean, it's just really about extending the reach and getting into some new audiences, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I just want to manage expectations. Rob Walsh, the VP of Libsyn, has
Yeah.
a bi-weekly show with Elsie Escobar, who they've both been on Podcast Junkies,
Mhm.
pioneers and veterans in the podcasting space. But he has he releases stats and median numbers because Libsyn has so many podcasts that he can do reporting on that. If you're getting about 140 downloads within the first 30 days an episode goes live, you're doing better than 50% of all shows. And then the number jumps up a little. If you're doing about 1,100, you're doing better than 80% of all shows.
Uh-huh.
And that's enough for most people because then it jumps to 4,000 for top 90, 14,000 for top 95, and then 50,000 top
Yeah.
98 or something like that. But I just want to kind of manage expectations because people start getting a couple of hundred downloads and they're like, oh, my podcast is not doing so good. We see this in like the Facebook groups, and all of us who've been podcasting for a while, like kind of want to like do the virtual like slap upside the head, like, what are you talking about? If I
Yeah.
put you in a room with
Y-
200 people, who had your attention, I'm sure you'd be really happy. So
Yeah.
focus on delivering value. If you're doing it for a vanity play, that's going to be harder because you got to build an audience and to get into those tens of thousands. But if you're trying to build a business off of it, you don't really need it's not about the quantity of people, it's about the quality of the people that are listening. Are they following you week in and week out? Are you asking them to engage? Are you taking them off of the podcasting platform onto the next part of your funnel? Like, are
Yeah.
you asking for an email? Are you providing a valuable lead magnet, like I'm going to do for you in a couple of minutes? Are you telling them to join your Facebook group? Are you telling them about all the different places you can connect? Typically, I like one call to action to get the email, and then you can slow down the conversation and be like, "Oh, thanks. Here's what I promised on the podcast. Now let me tell you about it, the other great things we do." And for my clients, at least, they're trying to build a relationship with someone who's getting value from what I'm saying and then becoming down the road a client.
That's that's fantastic. And the online space, what I really love about it is that I have friends now all over the world. And same with podcasting. You don't know where people are going to show up and consume your content. And the relationships you build are amazing. It's like you were talking about earlier, is you go to conference and all of a sudden all these people are opening an entirely new world you never realized existed.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So what's on the future? What's on the roadmap for Harry and the fullcast.co? What's your
Yeah.
strategy, next steps?
I have a mission to help 1 million people find their voice, and there's going to be a various ways that people can do it. I'm not going to be able to likely get to one-to-one contact with these people, so I'm building platforms for people so that they can amplify it, and just the network effect. If I get a show and they get 10,000 people, we did a show for Samantha Peshek, who's an Olympic medalist. She crossed the 250,000 downloads mark. She's now
Wow.
producing the show with her season 3 just launched. And but small shows, big shows, and I'm just trying to let people. They have a voice inside of them, and I don't want them to like realize that they couldn't get their message out because there was a couple of roadblocks there. So anything I can do to like help
Yeah.
one person or help one person help 100,000 people find their voice is something I'm excited about. And my personal podcast, Podcast Junkies, helps me have that and continue that relationship with people in the community.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate podcast junkies, and I love the fact that you're doing this. And I've been in radio and broadcasting, and I started out kind of in a different arena, coming from radio, and it's just still I just watching this grow, and it's just like it's amazing. We had Mark Shaw on yesterday who talked about
Oh
the
yeah,
spot a guest,
brought a guest. Yeah.
and it just happens that you guys were back to back, but it's the podcasting theme exists, and I've been podcasting. I've helped produce over 1,000 shows at some point in time. So it's like
Wow.
the reality is that helping people share their message is an incredibly valuable gift. And thank you for sharing it, Harry. I really appreciate what you're doing. And I applaud you, and I look forward to even more opportunities to connect with you in the future. And it would be nice to, have you back and share some more
Yeah.
stories as well. So you're always welcome. Now that you're an official pirate, number 100, Pirate
Nice.
Harry.
Nice.
So let's keep this going and help more people out in the world. And I'm kind of doing the same thing. I'm just launching the Pirate Syndicate, where I'm helping people live stream, and
Sweet.
then once it live streams, I'm just converting that into a podcast and a post and a transcription, and it's a kind of a it's more of a streamlined strategy. And so, if people need more strategy and they need more coaching, it's probably something that we could work together on and
Yeah.
create some of those areas. So do you know Lonnie Ray?
I don't know. We haven't met.
Okay. So Lonnie Ray's been on the show. She actually has a coaching for podcaster, on their voice and their
Oh,
questions.
cool. That's great.
That would be another collaboration that would be pretty interesting to connect with. So,
Yeah, and if people need help launching their show, I created a special link just for your audience at fullcast.co/pirate.
all right.
And it's the ultimate podcast launch game plan that you mentioned earlier, and it'll help them get started. What I realized is a lot of basic questions that people were asking, so I just put it all in one PDF to help people kind of get through the humps and not go down some YouTube rabbit holes that are like with 3-year-old advice.
Well, it is evolving all the time. So it pays to connect with a professional. Thank you, Harry, so much for being here. So if you had to leave the guests with one item in the world, what's your word of advice for today?
I believe everyone that's listening or that's either live, watching live, or going to catch the replay has a unique voice that needs to be heard by your audience. So, today is the day that you decide that you're not going to let that voice die inside of you and take the next step and figure out what that means for you.
Awesome. That's beautiful. Thank you, Harry, so much for being here. And as always, kindness is cool, smiles are free, and you enjoy the day.
Likewise, brother. Thank you.
So we'll see you again. And I created this brand new